So the themes we're going to discuss are cultural change, compliance burden, and effective pursuit of purpose. And I echo the previous acknowledgements of country and respect for First Nations elders. We think of governance really as a set of rules or processes and relationships that control an organisation. And I think that very concept of control implies an imposition. How do we embed governance principles in the day-to-day life of an organisation that will provide direction and safely guide the organisation to achieve its mission? And how can we learn from each other's experiences of how governance is working within and infusing organisations? Our panel is going to talk about the organisations that they work with and their experiences in this regard. And two of our panel are from that emerging group of charity lawyers who are acting in-house. Sally will no doubt tell us about the very small, the origins of a very small group of those lawyers who were working as general counsel in not-for-profit organisations. But over the last decade, that has become a burgeoning part of our profession. Brooke Della Vedova is the Interim General Counsel at Greenpeace, and she's going to share with us how integrity with good governance infuses that iconic environmental organisation. And then online, Angela Fimanoa, the Head of Legal at Mission Australia, will draw attention to the compliance burdens faced by charities, especially in recent days. She'll speak to the competing interests of finding the resources for compliance whilst at the same time pursuing mission. These are really war stories from the trenches. And then Caitlin Edwards, who is a Senior Associate here at Arnold Block Leibler's Public Interest and Native Title Practices, is going to pick up that elusive theme of ESG. She's going to make it clear to us, and then she's going to reflect on the implications for charitable purpose. So each of our speakers will make a presentation and then they'll each follow on from the other and we'll go to questions. Thanks very much, Brooke.
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and to acknowledge that this land was never ceded. And going back to what Monica was saying this morning in her extremely powerful, in my view, presentation, I know that we've all got a lot of work to do in addressing the ongoing consequences of colonisation, and that working in the charities sector gives us an opportunity to do some of that work. I'd also like to thank ABL for having us, and ABL provides really substantial expert support to Greenpeace, and we're extremely grateful for it. So, and thank you for having us today. I'm only new to the charities. I wouldn't call myself a charities lawyer. I'm an ex-litigator who had a tree change and ended up at Greenpeace as interim counsel. So if you have any difficult charities law questions, you can direct them to Matthew Harding. I feel really compelled to tell you that I did my undergraduate law degree with Matthew, and he spent a lot of time in the cafes drinking coffee and hanging out with his mates. So and blowing off classes. So it's really good that he came good. Really impressed that he came good. Good job, Matt. So I'm talking to you about our integrity system at Greenpeace. And I'm kind of coming at it from the perspective of someone who's new to the organisation and comes from a law firm background. And so it's the kinds of things that I've really been struck by. Greenpeace is a company limited by guarantee. We're an ACNC registered charity. Our objects are to protect, preserve and enhance the natural environment and to promote nuclear disarmament and peace. We're financially independent from political or commercial interests, and that's really very close to our hearts, and all of our money comes from donations from individuals so that we can maintain our independence. But it also means that we're extremely concerned to make sure that we maintain our integrity for our own purposes, but also in the eyes of our donors. and we're part of a global Greenpeace network comprised of 26 independent organisations over a large number of countries. And we have a coordinating body, Greenpeace International. So when it comes to thinking about integrity and integrity across that network, one of the advantages is that we have some resources. Compared to some charities, we're quite well resourced. We have some centralised capacity and resources to do things like work on integrity. But there's also a really significant challenge because we have to try to develop systems that might be applicable in a whole range of areas with different needs and different legal systems and different cultural backgrounds. But what Greenpeace International did a few years ago was convene a group of experts comprising lawyers and philosophers and HR experts and a group of people to do some thinking about developing a global integrity system that would infuse the work of all of the regional organisations. And they came up with this integrity policy. So it's a policy that it's kind of a template, but that it can be adjusted to take account of local circumstances. It's designed to cover matters which go to honesty and integrity. It doesn't deal with HR matters or industrial issues. And there's a process for investigating complaints, which is pretty much standard around the world. There's three main components that I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail. So one of them is the rules. I should say at the outset, it's Greenpeace International is headquartered in Amsterdam, and one criticism of the what I'm going to show you is that it is quite kind of Western or global northern, or there is a stream of work going on, which is how do we decolonise our integrity system. But there are some good things as well about our integrity system, and that's what I'm going to speak to you about. So we have rules, we have a code of conduct and other integrity policies that I'll talk a little bit about. We have a process, we have a protocol for handling complaints and violations, and we have a support system, which is important and I'll talk about. So an integrity violation could be one of a few things. It could be a violation of our code of conduct. It could be a violation of one of our policies that go to things like preventing harassment and bullying, preventing misuse of power, financial responsibility, or any of the statutory duties referred to in the code of conduct. So there's the code of conduct, there's a suite of policies, and then there's legislation that's referred to in the policies. A publicly available version of all of those policies is available at that website, but you can also, if you're super excited after this presentation, email me and I can send you anything that's of interest. But I'm really going to focus on the code of conduct expectations. So the code of conduct talks about the values and the principles of Greenpeace Australia Pacific, and that's important. But it also goes on to outline expectations that Greenpeace has of its staff and that we have of each other. And I've been really struck by this. There's 9 of them, and beneath each of them is a few subcategories. And they're in the language of I will do this and I will not do that. And again, that might sound a little kind of brittle or codified or micromanaging, but I've actually found that it's really refreshing, because what Greenpeace has done is said, well, this is what's okay and what's not okay, and we're going to say it. And I can tell, I don't think many law firms would do that, because why would we say exactly what we mean? And then people will hold us accountable. Whereas I think that's what Greenpeace has done, and it's really commendable. So there's a general conduct provision, and it says, I will act in the best interests of Greenpeace, separating personal opinions, activities and affiliations from the performance of professional responsibilities. There's a point about avoiding corruption, impartiality, financial responsibility, use of organisational property and resources, environmental responsibility, working together. And I find these ones really interesting. So there's one, I will show loyalty to my teammates and avoid gossip, conversations or actions with others that seek directly or indirectly to undermine or demean other colleagues. And I will listen and consider others' opinions. While I may choose to vocalise my own opinions with vigour and passion, I'll be considerate of other options. I will adhere to decisions and directions once they have been initiated and refrain from activities that undermine decisions. So again, I actually find this really impressive because I've seen plenty of this conduct. I don't know if, surely most people who've had a career for a while have seen a bit of this. So gossiping, undermining, I don't like that decision, so I'm going to kind of white ant it. And when it happens, you know it's not good, you know it's not good for culture, and you know it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel right, but you don't know what to do about it. There might be a nebulous policy somewhere that says we treat each other with respect. But how do you complain about that? And how do you go to someone and say, this is happening and it's not okay, but what do I do? Whereas this makes it very easy to make a complaint. And it's not a hotbed of complaints in Greenpeace. It's not that everyone's running around complaining about each other, but it makes it very clear what's okay and what's not okay. And when something happens that's not okay, there's a process that you can go to and you can refer to these, and it's just very easy to be able to say, well, this is the conduct that's been going on and we've all agreed that we don't do that. It applies to all people. It's got broad applications, so board members, salaried staff, interns, volunteers, freelancers and contractors under our direction. There's a system, and again, I mean, maybe this seems kind of bureaucratic and a lot of investment, and maybe it's not something that all charities can do, but we've been able to set it up so that we have a framework of people that you can talk to. So you can go and talk to, if you see an integrity violation, you can obviously talk to the other person involved. So that might be either, there might be a dispute between you and someone else because you believe that they've breached one of the standards, or you might have have observed conduct that you think is not right and you want to complain about it. You can raise it directly with the person if that's safe and appropriate. You can raise it with your manager. You can raise it with a person of trust. So these are people within each of our organisations who have volunteered to that role, and they undergo training and they periodic training, and their role is to, they don't solve any problems, they don't make any decisions, they're a support person. You can go to them and they know about the integrity systems and they will help explain them and they will help support you through the process of making a complaint. You can go to an integrity officer. So I'm an integrity officer at the moment. These are people who are entrusted with making sure that the system is working as it should be. Complaints come to us at first instance, and then there's things that we have to do to move those complaints along. I'm not going to talk about whistleblowers. This looks more dramatic or complex than it is. What this is really saying is that there's a variety of things that can happen when an alleged violation arises. You can talk to various people, you can engage in mediation, you can have certain kinds of discussions. But if at the end of the day it's not resolved, what happens is you make a complaint to the integrity officer. The integrity officer then forms a view about whether it's plausible that there's a complaint. It's a low bar. You just have to feel that it's plausible. If you feel that it's plausible, you recommend to the executive director that an investigation be undertaken. The executive director makes a decision and an investigation happens. It might be outsourced or it might be done internally. The investigator says, here's what I think happened, and then the executive director makes a decision about what flows from that. So that could be, supportive actions that flow, but they could also be things like disciplinary actions. There's a whole infrastructure around these principles to do with training and community. So another good thing about being a globally networked organisation is that each office around the world has integrity officers and persons of trust. So I have a fortnightly meeting with integrity officers from around the world, and that's actually really helpful and amazing. And I recently had a discussion with my integrity mentor because I was going through an investigation process and was able to say, well, this has happened and that's happened. And he said, yeah, that always happens and here's what you can do. I appreciate that's not something that all organisations will be able to do, but it is very helpful. And there is training, periodic training for new people about what the system is, who the integrity officers are and who the persons of trust are. So it wasn't just set up and leave it alone. It's been a really substantial investment in our integrity, and it's an ongoing iterative investment. Okay, sorry that this is a lot of information in a small space, but you don't have to read all of that because I'm going to tell you about the good bits. The other thing I just wanted to mention coming in as an outsider is that Greenpeace is very explicit about what its culture is and has been and will be in the future. And one of the things that they talk about a lot is we used to have a culture of blame a few years ago. We felt we'd kind of devolved into a bit of a toxic culture of blame. And there was a lot of work done around moving into a culture of accountability. And then more recently, there's a lot of work around moving into a culture of impact. And there's a couple of things in there that I thought I would share with you. One of them is, and it's terrible to read, but one of the, in a culture of blame, one of the beliefs might be that admitting weakness is career limiting. And lawyers are bad at that, they think that. In a culture of accountability, you might think we're all still learning. In a culture of impact, you would believe that acknowledging vulnerability is a source of strength and we are all still learning together. So I find it really impressive that the organisation is up for saying that's our culture, that's what we aim for, and being quite granular and explicit about it, not just kind of generally saying, oh, well, we're a culture of impact. This is what it means. And so when you see conduct, which I haven't seen yet, but if you saw conduct that was, oh, I can't be vulnerable, I'm just going to pretend I know it all because I don't, it'd be career limiting, you've got a way to call it out if you see it. Another one that, what was the other one I was going to draw your attention to? There's one in there about work. So in a culture of blame, everyone might believe everyone should work like I do. In a culture about accountability, you might believe that people have differing workloads and ways of working. In a culture of impact, the belief that we're aiming for is that work is fairly distributed and different ways of working create adaptability. And again, I mean, a lot of people talk that talk, I guess, but being able to very explicitly describe that not only do we acknowledge that people have different ways of working, but different ways of working are really a positive and help promote innovation. And we're really committed to that and we're stating our commitment to it is really refreshing, I find. So after that promotion of Greenpeace, I will move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Angela, welcome.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Can you see that?
That's fine. Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Hi, I'm Angela Fermano. I'm the Head of Legal for Service Delivery at Mission Australia. The General Counsel, Sally Ashcroft, is currently on leave, so I'm also acting General Counsel. So lots going on at the moment. I'd also like to acknowledge the Gadigal people being the traditional owners of the land from which I'm speaking today from Sydney CBD. I'd like to firstly just talk about our Mission Australia's purpose, vision, goals and values. So our purpose is we're inspired by Jesus Christ. We exist to meet human need and to spread the knowledge of the love of God. Our vision, an Australia where all of us have a safe home and can thrive. Our goal is to end homelessness and ensure people in communities in need can thrive. Our values, compassion, integrity, respect and perseverance. Just a little snapshot of the summary of the year 2020 to 21. We're a large not-for-profit organisation. We helped approximately 152,000 people on their journey towards independence. This was achieved through approximately 2,300 staff members, 474 programs and 806 volunteers. A little bit about Mission Australia. We're a national organisation. We're also a company limited by guarantee and we have a national footprint. We specialise in a very varied range of services across many disciplines: homelessness, aged care services in New South Wales, We're an NDIS provider in terms of LAC and EC services. We run children, youth, families and community services, mental health support, alcohol and drug support, disability inclusion and support, employment skills training, justice and corrections, gambling support. And we're also a Tier 1 community housing provider under a separate legal entity, Mission Australia Housing. Just a snapshot about Mission Australia. So today I'm here to talk about some of the challenges in terms of our compliance requirements during the pandemic over the last couple of years. And some of these challenges still continue as we are obviously still very much living within the environment of COVID-19. Like many organisations, it introduced significant challenges. We had to confront situations where we were challenged contractually, operationally, legally, ethics, and concerningly situations which also challenged our purpose. We had to pivot very quickly and change our business models to deliver services in a manner which was unforeseeable, unpredictable, all the while ensuring compliance with our legal obligations and delivering on our purpose. In terms of the legal team role, I suppose today I just wanted to talk about some of the stories from the field. So it's more of an operational chat about some of the challenges we faced. So the legal team here at Mission Australia, we were part of a centralised COVID management team, which required daily, certainly in the peaks, meetings and weekly meetings as well. We provided significant advice on various aspects, delivered in very tight timeframes, preparing support tools, for example, around consents and working from home and privacy. We supported the services and also the enabling functions of Mission Australia, including HR, risk, property. We were also quite heavily involved in the preparation and review of communications. We provided